Hey. Welcome back to the Love is Black podcast. I'm Carice.
I'm Harvey.
He's Harvey.
I still am.
You is?
I is.
Oh gosh, you're talking like your kids now. They don't speak proper English.
Yo kids. My kids speak proper phonetic English.
Have you met your kids? They
Yeah.
do not speak. His kids do not speep proper phonetic English. And that's okay because neither does he. So we see where they get it from. Anywho.
The jokes.
Today, we are super excited. We've got a great guest.
We have Angela Maradiaga. And what do you know about her? This. Experiencing sexual abuse at an early age, Angie became a runaway who bounced from one troubled home to another, eventually ending up in the hands of a controlling, abusive pimp. Despite all of the challenges Angela Maradiaga endured, she prevailed and worked her way up to becoming the CFO of a multi-million-dollar music company without ever having a college degree. She is serious. She also became the founder and CEO of Evoleros, which is the #1 Sexercise Studio for couples in Los Angeles, California. And now she's the author of her memoir, Chasing Black Butterflies. Her story is not only powerfully moving, but will also encourage you to remember you are never defined by your mistakes or your past. You can achieve anything you set your mind and heart to. No matter what you've done or been through, it's never too late to transform your life from a caterpillar to a black butterfly.
Yay, you're gonna love this interview. It is fantastic. So many nice gems to get out of this one. And I think at the end of it, you will just look at some things just a little differently because, there are some people who carry their trauma and there's some people who offload it and, they just carry it differently.
And then there are people who take their trauma and use it as fuel to succeed and to do great things. And that's Angela. She went through a lot, and to see where she is now, and it's just the beginning from what she's going to become, you will be astounded. I was talking to her the whole time. I'm like, you're amazing.
Yeah.
So I think you'll definitely enjoy, you'll be inspired.
You will. So enjoy the interview.
All right, we are lucky enough to have Angela Maradiaga with us. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
We're so happy to have you here. I'm incredibly excited. You've got interesting content for us to just dive into today.
Yes. All right, so tell us a little something about you just to kind of get us started, and then we'll break it open, talk about everything.
Okay, so I am the owner and founder of Evoleros, which means evolving into a sex god. And I actually teach couples sexercises, so different sexual positions that they can do with their partner. And then I also teach them exercises that will help them last longer in those positions. So I've been doing that since 2015. And then when COVID hit, we had to shut our studio down. And now I do pop-up events. But actually, when COVID shut down, it gave me an opportunity to do what I've always wanted to do, which was to write a memoir about my life. So I just published a book called Chasing Black Butterflies, and it's about my traumatic childhood and how I was able to overcome all of those obstacles and become the person that I am today.
All right. Okay.
I love that title of the book. I'm sorry, Harvey.
No.
I'm just curious as to how you got to that title.
So it's kind of a metaphor for so many things. I was always feeling like I was being chased by my past predators, men, and just there was always something trying to pull me back. And I also feel like there are so many Black women who are, raped or molested and no one talks about it. So it was kind of like our story. So that's how I kind of came up with it. And also a butterfly represents, you transforming into something out of a traumatic past. So I just love the whole butterfly concept.
Yes, that is awesome. And, I'm sure there are plenty of people who appreciate your vulnerability, being able to share your own personal traumas in order to help others overcome theirs. That is truly an admirable thing. I love it.
It took me a long time to get here, but finally here.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Do you want to, well, I mean, the journey was long. Do you want to give us a little, I mean, we want people to buy the book,
Yeah.
but give us a little something, give us a tidbit, tell us a little bit about your journey, just whatever you feel to giving us right now.
So it started out with me being raised by a single mom who had 3 kids. I never really knew who my father was. And at a very young age, I was molested by a neighbor. And it kind of put me into this whole, just like all these bottled up emotions that I didn't know how to deal with because I didn't tell my mom. I always felt like it was my fault for putting myself in that situation, even though I was only 5 years old. I felt like because I didn't stay where my mom told me to stay, it was my fault. So I kind of held that in for the longest time, and it made me more rebellious and angry as a teenager. And so it got to the point where my mom just didn't know how to handle me. So her thing was to always kick me out the house. Like how she deals with problems is just to be like, okay, go away for a while and then let's calm down. But when you're young and you're a teenage girl, there's so many things that can happen to you on the streets. So that's kind of where my story talks about is me bouncing from home to home, people taking me in, strangers, and me having to sleep with men sometimes just for a place to stay. And then I ended up getting involved with an abusive relationship, and I dealt with that for a couple of years and how I was managing to deal with him. And I ended up getting away and joining the military, and then that just kind of like set the tone for me changing my life and turning my life around and getting on the path and where I'm at today.
Yeah, it was kind of like a 180, I guess. Is that what that would be? Because you go from like that lack of structure, being out on your own at such a young age, to like super structure in the military.
Yeah, the military, I loved it. When I first joined, it just taught me so much discipline, which I needed. I was such a rebellious teenager. And it also gave me structure, and I had family, and like in my military group, we were like family. We looked out for each other. So I had that, and I had a brother and sisterhood that kind of made me feel more secure in who I am. And and then also what got me to really turn around is when I started doing volunteer work. Once I started doing volunteer work and I was talking to other girls, I actually did it first because I felt like, oh, I'm in a good place now. I want to share my story. But it actually was therapeutic for me. After I did my little counseling sessions early on, it helped me learn how to communicate my feelings, but it was always still there. But once I started helping the girls, it's like, now I feel like what I went through was for a reason. And I think once you figure out like the reason on why things happen, you're able to live with it like a lot better. So just by me being able to relate to these girls and, helping them out, it definitely helps me out a lot.
Wow. I want to ask, so you're early, the beginning of your life, early on, obviously, an enormous amount of trauma. And then you go into the military. When you went into the military, how did you deal with that? I can imagine being around men, and obviously in the military, there's a lot of men there. How was it in the beginning? Were you immediately comfortable? Were you leery? How was it when you first joined?
Well, I was always comfortable with men because I was the only girl in my family. So I only had uncles, I only had male cousins, and I only had brothers that I grew up with. So I was comfortable with them. And then when I was going through so much stuff as a teenager, I honestly felt like a lot of it was my fault for being bad, being rebellious, jumping from home to home. So and not listening to my mom and just all that stuff. For the longest time, I felt like it was my fault. So I didn't really look at men as predators at the time. I kind of was always still searching for love. So every time I did meet them, I would give them myself, wanting to find love and open up to them. So I never was scared. When I was in the military, though, I was very rebellious still. I got in so much trouble all the time. I just didn't like following rules. I ended up getting kicked out of the military, but I still remain in contact with everyone I met there, just because of even my drill sergeants, they were very hard on me, and one of them pulled me aside and said, I remind him so much of his daughter. and he just wanted the best for me. He was like, I'm really hard on you because I see potential. And at the time it didn't stick to me, you know, but after I got older, I'm like, hearing all those positive things that people were telling me started to stick later on. Like, I have potential, I could be something, and all that stuff. So even though at the time it didn't really work for me, it set the tone later on.
Wow. So how did life transition for you after you left the military?
Well, and also one of the reasons why I joined the military is my abusive relationship that I was in. He was actually a pimp. And so when I met him at church, I had no idea that he was a pimp. And so when we got together, and I was in a very vulnerable state. Like I just moved in with my second mom. My mom had kicked me out, and I was at the point where I knew if I didn't focus on school, I was going to fail. I wasn't going to be able to graduate high school. So I was like, I really want to, you know, get my life together. She said that if I came to stay with her, I had to go to church. I had to go to school. So I knew this was kind of like my last time, you know, unless I would have to get my GED or something like that. So I went to church. He tried to talk to me, and I was like, no, I'm trying to get my life together. And he was so smart and charming and knew how to manipulate everyone he talked to. He ended up going through my second mom, who was very strict, by the way. Like I couldn't even watch music videos. I couldn't go on dates or anything like that. But for some reason, he persuaded her to allow him to take me out on a date. And that just goes to show you how he was able to talk his way into anything. So at first I didn't want to go, but I was like, well, I haven't been able to go anywhere since I've been living there. And this is kind of like my chance. And I had a gut feeling that he wasn't the one I should be around, but I still went. And that first night, I ended up getting in trouble with him. Like he ended up keeping me out all night, and she got mad and kicked me out. So I ended up having to stay with him. And that's when I was exposed to what he really was and what he was doing. So that's when I tried to get out of that relationship, it was so hard because he would track me down no matter where I went. And then he even threatened my family. So then I saw a commercial for the military and was like, this is my way of getting away from everyone and doing something with my life. So that's how I ended up with the military. And I kind of think that's why I wasn't 100% sticking with it when I was there, because I was joining for the wrong reasons. I was just trying to get away. I wasn't really trying to invest myself in the military. So after I got out of the military, I ended up meeting my ex-husband. We got married, and I ended up staying on the East Coast from California. And then that's when I ended up getting a job working as an administrative assistant, and just worked my way up with that company to become an accountant. So I stayed there for 11 years. And then I decided I wanted to come back to California. I felt like it was time that I could actually come back and not relive all those old memories. Because every time I would come to visit, it was like so many memories would come back, especially because my mom still lived in the house I grew up at, still to this day. So every time I would go to visit her, it's like, this is the house that all these memories happened. So, but I'm actually at the age now where I was like, okay, I feel like I can come back. So like about 10 years ago, I moved back to California, and I ended up getting a job as a CFO without a college degree, which is very hard to do. I mean, it took me 4 months, to find a job in California that paid what I wanted. And not to mention, then I ended up trying to apply for jobs that I didn't think I could qualify for because I was having such a hard time finding a job. And I landed this job that was way above what I thought I qualified for. But he said he felt like he could trust me because you need someone in that position you handle the whole company's finances. So that's how I ended up getting that job. But yeah, I got a CFO position without a college degree. And that's why part of my story is no matter what you've been through, or even if you didn't go to college or anything, like you could still make something out of your life.
Wow. As I'm hearing you tell this story, I mean, you're so composed as you're telling this, and I applaud you.
Yeah.
One thing that hit me is that so you're with your family and you're going through all this, you're in an abusive relationship, you're going through all that, and then you went into the military. And unfortunately, the military has quite a history of sexual abuse for the female soldiers there. So you kind of went, it's like you didn't really leave it, you just went to a different location.
Yeah.
It's weird, but you made it through all of that and you're amazing. I mean, I don't know, I'm astounded. So I just wanted to stop and applaud you for making it through all that you've been through.
Yeah, I so many people, even when I was doing my volunteer work, no one ever thought I have been through anything because I don't show it. Now, I feel like once I got out of the military and after my marriage, I really started to grow up a lot, being out on my own, having my own place, getting my own jobs and stuff like that. So, and then also volunteering just made me grow up a lot. So, but when I would volunteer, some of the girls, they'd be like, "You never been through anything. What do you know? And, you look like you've been raised in a rich family," or, stuff like that. Like I get a totally different perception of who I am by everybody. Like everybody that meets me, they think I'm somebody, but I'm actually the opposite. Like I'm very grounded, down to earth, and, just because I know I've been through stuff and I don't think myself above anybody.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so CFO, how do we get from CFO, very corporate structured, I'm sure, to Sexercise?
So when I moved out to Maryland, or when I moved to California, of course, I was single, I was dating. It was the first time I was really single when I turned my 30s, because I was married in my whole 20s and in another long-term relationship. So I was very intimidated by the people I was meeting, because I was meeting actors and models and, just very attractive men. And I was like, I haven't been dating like that. And I wanted to get my body in shape, and I really liked pole aerobics. So I was actually looking for something like that. And then this guy I started dating, he was an actor, and I knew it was getting time to where, eventually it was going to lead into something more. But then I started thinking he's probably been with a lot of women, and, I need to learn some moves. So, so I started just Googling different exercise classes, and there wasn't any, except, learning through stuff on porn sites. But I wanted to actually go through a class, learn how to do different positions and work my body out at the same time. So I just kind of created it. And when I did it, I saw that it was better when you did it with a partner, instead of a single person just going in there. And when I saw the couples laugh with each other, have fun, and learn moves that they can learn in the bedroom, I was just like, this is it. I loved making other couples happy and seeing how that just was a great date night and stuff like that for them to do. So that's how I ended up coming up with that.
That's so very interesting. So what I've heard is that you don't really burn too many calories through sex. So sexercising, the first thing I'm thinking is can you really burn a lot of calories doing that? I know you said you wanted to kind of keep your body in shape. Does it actually help?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a workout. And what's funny is people think when they come to my class, it's going to be more sexual positions, but it's a workout. You will sweat, you will be sore. So for instance, I'll have, let's just take a doggy, or not doggy style, reverse cowgirl.
Okay.
So you know how the man is, or the one person is on the bottom and another person is on top. Well, the person on top has to use a lot of thigh muscles to stay in that position. So after I teach them the position, I'll have them do some squats on top of their partner kind of thing, while the other person is doing a sit-up, because you have to work your abs. So it's couples exercises while they're learning different positions.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. That's a nice
that.
way to mix it up.
All right.
Yeah, because I know I've been in certain positions, and if I'm not drunk or off something, I get tired really fast. I'm like, dang, So yeah, it definitely works when you stay consistent.
So what was it like kind of creating and putting this, these classes together? Did you find couples or friends to try exercises out and see how it would work? How did you get this going?
Well, when I first came out with the idea and I ran it by my family, everybody was like, okay. Like everybody thought it was like a real sexual kind of class. Right. And in my mind, I knew what it was. I knew it was going to be something you can do in front of your friends and family, because it wasn't going to be like grinding and a big old orgy like most people think about when they hear this class. So once I actually I hired actors to make a video of it. And once I made the video, it's like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. Like it's basically couples exercises, because the sexual positions are like an exercise, So, and how I do the class is just, it's more fun. Like people are laughing throughout the whole thing. So once I kind of just was like, okay, I'm not gonna listen to my family. I'm gonna just do this, make a video. That's actually what got it started. And then people started taking me more seriously. And then I got blogs and magazines wrote about it. Some people took the class. I had Kev on Stage, his wife hired me to do their podcast. And it just kind of blew up from there. And then, like I said, COVID happened, and then Instagram shut down my page. So I had to start from scratch. It's been COVID, kind of like that whole section just kind of shut down the studio. But I kind of feel like it happened for a reason. Every time something negative happens, I have to look at the brighter side. And that actually, when my studio shut down, it gave me a chance to finish my book that I've been wanting to do for years. So I'm really happy that it happened that way.
That's fantastic. So was the shift to go from in-person in studio to kind of doing a little bit more distance teaching, was that shift difficult to make?
Well, I've only been doing Zoom so far. This Valentine's Day weekend one is going to be the first time I'm not going to be in person. And I'm also going to do the Zoom too. So I'm going to have I'm going to have half the amount of people that I normally would have in the class to be in person, because I get emails all the time. And there has been so many times I actually thought about just giving up on it after COVID happened, but I get so many emails like, when's your next class? And I just remember how people were feeling when I was doing it. And I'm like, you know what? And I feel like there's so many things in life that break up couples. And there's not too many things that actually try to get you guys to stay together and work on your communication. Because I also, not only do I teach the sexual positions, but afterwards we have fun games that they play to get to know each other and talk about things that you would never want to bring up sometimes with your partner. So, okay. I don't want to just focus on the sexual part. I want to also focus on the communication and the bonding and the intimacy.
Oh, that's good.
Wow.
And obviously that there's a lot of intimacy in an exercise class like that.
Yeah.
So have you considered running with that? I mean, the class is one thing, but the stuff that you do afterwards sounds really interesting and promising for more.
I would like to do like workshops and stuff like that. And like, I had so many ideas. I wanted to do like a retreat, where couples can just go and do stuff like that. So I have so many thoughts. It's just the amount of making it happen and putting it together. So right now I'm kind of building back up my clients again, because like I said, Instagram kind of shut my page, and that's where I had all my followers and stuff like that. So I'm starting from scratch. And I don't want to do it like some people do, get fake people. Like I actually work for every one of my followers. So, but once I do that, I do want to start doing more like the ideas that I had and stuff. And I even want to have a singles class, because I get that a lot. Do I have to bring a partner? So I do want to start what I originally wanted to do with singles. And there's just so many different ideas that I have. So hopefully I can bring that together. But I also work full time with my CFO position. So
you're still a CFO.
Yeah, I do that full time, and then I do the Evoleros on the side, and I write my book, and then I have my family and my fiance that I have to spend time with.
Oh, wow. Is the fiance the same actor? Did that wind up working out?
No. That's a totally different person. Actually,
okay. So it didn't work out. That's fine.
Yeah, that was I had, and that's my second book is actually going to talk about like all the guys that I've dated when I moved to California, because it's like Sex in the City kind of thing. It was so many different crazy guys, but I had to kiss a lot of frogs to find my prince. So it all worked out in the end.
Oh, that is fantastic. I can imagine that in your work, you've come across a lot of people and you've probably helped a lot of people. What's the most touching thing that you've ever heard as far as a testimonial or, an experience that you've been a part of for a couple and their transitions?
As far as the Sexercise, there was one couple, she emailed me beforehand and she was like, what is your classes about? And also the stuff, she was like, I've been having problems in my marriage and I kind of feel like, I'm trying to get something to open up that communication again. So afterwards, she did say that they haven't laughed like that in a long time. So she was like, thank you. I don't know if it ever worked out or not, but I do remember her saying, just thank you. We haven't laughed like that. It's been a long time. So that was really touching. Another story is somebody brought when I had my studio, someone brought someone on there for their first date. So that was interesting because, you do have to get close and do some exercises. So that was funny. That was one of the funniest ones because, he was like, okay, this is the first date. Like, I can't wait for the second.
Right? How do you top that? Like, what do you next?
That's an interesting idea.
And then as far as my book, I definitely, when I went to a book signing thing and somebody told me how my story it felt like I was writing about their life. And I've gotten emails and DMs from people just saying, what an inspiration it was to hear that. So that made it all worth it. Because honestly, the reason why it took me so long is because I knew it was going to cause problems with my mom. Because we had a falling out right after high school, and then we mended our relationship in my 20s. But it wasn't. We kind of just swept everything under the rug. She doesn't like to talk about it. I like to talk about things, but then I don't want to bring up things with her because I know how she is, and it gets awkward. And so we just swept it under the rug, but it was always there. So with me coming out with the book, we've never talked about it ever. Like, she knew I was coming out with the book, but she didn't ask me about details. She didn't say nothing. So I knew it was going to cause some issues, which it kind of did. We didn't talk, like, it's just different now. Like, we don't talk as much as we used to. But when I hear stories say that, it helped them or it was inspiration and it made them feel better about what they're going through, that kind of made it worth it. Because I have to do it for me. I have to make my life feel like it happened for a reason. So you can't hold yourself because of somebody else, even if it's family.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
A thread that's kind of run through our podcast within our community, within our culture, is kind of how taboo, therapy is. Yeah. Our mental health is really something we don't talk much about. You've been through a ridiculous amount of trauma and have come out the other side. Amazing. Did it take therapy, or was it something you kind of dealt with on your own? How did you get yourself? I'd be interested to know what you did to kind of get through all this and then come out an amazing person, confident, taking over the world. How'd you do it?
Well, at first it was something I had to do because of the courts made me go, or my schools made me go, or my mom made me go. So at first I didn't want to go, and I went in there with the biggest attitude ever. But eventually I think you have to be self-aware. You can't continue to blame everybody for everything. And the way you react, you have to figure out why you react that way. And I knew I had a lot of anger in me. I knew that my rebellious side was just me being hurt, and I didn't know how to express myself. And because my family swept everything under the rug, everything I had was bottled up. Like, there was no one I could talk to about it. So then when I finally met a counselor, actually it took me almost committing suicide. When I almost committed suicide, I was in the hospital, and the counselor there, for some reason, I just felt a bond with her automatically. And I opened up to her more than I've opened up to anyone in my life. And once I did that, I realized how therapeutic it was to get it out. And once I started getting it out, I started learning how to communicate my feelings instead of just lashing out or being angry. I would say, this is how I feel. And it just, once you experience that, it's like, oh, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. So that, yeah, I recommend counseling. Like me and my fiance, we are going through premarital counseling and there's no problems. Like our relationship is like the best relationship I've ever had in my life. So, but even with that said, I'm such a huge fan of counseling and therapy that I want to be proactive. So, and there might be things that the counselor brings up that we had no idea to talk about. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that.
That's fantastic. We're proponents of it as well.
Yeah,
it's something
exactly.
that is very important. I think what's important to kind of touch on a little bit might be, I had a thought and then it literally just left my mind because as you were talking, it just popped in.
And they left you. Well,
I know.
okay, we'll cut.
I'm gonna edit this out.
We'll get that out.
Yeah.
Here's a question. So, and I guess I keep harping on it. Obviously, you've had quite an interesting life. Did you remember? Okay, quite interesting life. How was it? And obviously, you are, you're engaged now, and you're gonna get married. How did that affect the blossoming of the relationship that you're in now? Did it have an effect on how long it took you guys to connect, or tell us about how that happened?
With my marriage, he was like my military. I got with him for the wrong reasons. I was, trying to just run away from my situation. And when I met him, I felt like he was the opposite of all the guys I've ever dated. He was a church going boy, very Christian. And I felt like I needed to be that in order to have a healthy relationship, but then I wasn't who I really was. So in that marriage, I was somebody I wasn't. And eventually it started to, fester, and it was destined to end because I wasn't who I was and he wasn't the person I was supposed to be with. So we were together 5 years, and it was just, once I started getting more independence, I started talking back more because he was very controlling too. He didn't want me to have female friends. He wanted me to go to church every Sunday, and that's not who I am. I'm a very free-spirited person. I like to, have my friends. I like to go out. I like to, do what I want to do. So once I started making money and, having my career and stuff like that, we just started to fall apart. So then it took me years and years and lots of different guys to figure out what I really needed. And I honestly didn't know what I needed until I found him. And what I realized is, one, you have to be who you are completely. And even though most men are not going to like that, there's going to be someone that will. Because I used to get that all the time. Like, I'm very vocal, I'm very blunt, I'm very honest. I always kind of felt like it would be hard for me to settle down with just one person. Like, I wanted to date, I wanted to experience, I didn't want to just have one boyfriend. And most women aren't open about that. They feel like the guys might judge them. And I got judged a lot. Like, a lot of guys were like, if you're going to date other guys, I don't want to date with you. Well, would you rather want me to tell the truth or cheat on you? Because it's going to be one of the two. So, I dealt with a lot of guys, and I have guy best friends, and they would always tell me, men don't want to hear that, like, I can tell too much. If you go, if they ask me what I did last night, I'm like, oh, I went on a date. Like, guys don't want to hear that. But when I found him, he was like, okay, that's cool. Like, I'd rather know. And because of his past and what he went through, he was lied to and, cheated on before. So he'd rather know the truth, even if it hurts. So he was like the perfect puzzle piece for me and what I needed. So I think that's the number one thing, is no matter if 1 million people don't like you, still be yourself, because there's going to be that one, and that one is the only one that matters.
Awesome.
Yeah.
My thought process, going back to my lost thought, was kind of along that same lines, where I think it's really important to kind of go back and see if that therapy or just having a therapeutic process was part of how you learned to discover or really uncover what a healthy relationship could be like, should be like, and you would like to model that after. Was therapy a part of that?
I didn't really learn too much about relationships in therapy. It was always about my past and stuff like that. I never talked about what I was currently going through unless there was a problem. Like when me and my ex-husband were having problems, of course we went to therapy, but it was kind of trying to like fix it instead of finding out why I've had these issues. It actually was more self-awareness for me, learning about love languages and, oh, okay, this is how he likes, when he buys things, it's because this is his love language, or if this person does something for me, that's their love, like understanding people. That was more, I feel like you have to be self-aware of you and what you do. And I noticed too that there was also a pattern that I was doing in relationships. I was like the runaway bride. Every time guys would get too close, I would push away. And I had trouble with intimacy. When I didn't really look at guys in the face when I would have sex. It was more just a thing to do, and when I started doing Evoleros, I started researching about intimacy and making sure you look them in the eyes. And so the stuff that I was teaching, I was actually teaching myself as well and doing it. And I'm like, oh, so it's kind of like, self-awareness with that. So yeah, I didn't really learn too much stuff about relationships and counseling, but it was just more of what I taught myself and the things I was seeing.
Okay, nice. Well, I think it's a nice transition that you mentioned Evoleros. So just to recap, that's becoming a sex god?
Yeah, so when you start a business and you want to trademark it, you have to come up with something different, like Starbucks. I researched a lot of different companies like Starbucks and FedEx, and normally what they did is they got two words and meshed them together. So I wrote a bunch of different words about what my company represents, and it was like evolution, and then the sex god Eros. So I involved evolution with Eros, so Evoleros. And that's how I came up with that name, because I wanted something different. I wanted something that was not like any other name out there.
Awesome.
All right, so that sounds amazing. The book sounds absolutely amazing. Also, I wanted to ask about, in terms of the book, we kind of maybe transition through that. How long and how difficult was it to kind of sit down and write that book and kind of put your life on paper? How was that?
So I wanted to write it when I was in my 20s. Once I got married, I actually thought that was my happily ever after. And I'm so glad I didn't write my book then. Something always kept telling me, or there was always something that kept pushing it off. And I'm so glad I did, because my godmom actually told me, she was like, you're too young to write a book right now. You wait till you're 40. She actually said, wait till you're 40. And I actually got serious about it 5 years ago. I don't know what it was, but just a gut feeling, and just said, just start writing. And I just started writing little by little. Sometimes I would go months or a year without even touching it. But then something kept pulling me back like never before. Like before, I would never be pulled back, but something kept pulling me back. And then when COVID happened, I had that whole year to really focus on it. And once I really dove into it, I just couldn't stop. It was like shooting out. It was crazy how God works for me, like when it's meant to be, it will happen no matter when I try to fight it or not, it will just come out. So once I started it, of course, when I got to those memories, you have to keep reliving it, because you have to keep reading your book to make sure the words match, and you have to, it's so many times. So each time, at first it was too hard. I would keep putting it down and, maybe go weeks without writing or anything like that. But then eventually I got to the point where I kept reliving it till it didn't affect me anymore. Now I can read it and it doesn't affect me. And that's probably why I seem so composed now, because I've read it over and over again. I talked about it over and over again to myself in my head and relived it to the point where it almost feels like a movie, like you just watched a movie. so it doesn't really feel like it happened to me because I feel like I already dealt with that. Like I dealt with emotions. I forgive myself for what I put my through. I forgive my mom. I forgive, all the people that contributed to what happened to me. So I think that's why I'm able to talk about it the way it was. But yeah, at first it was very difficult to write, just because you feel like you're in that moment again.
Yeah.
So yeah, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You mentioned, I don't know, just as I've been hearing you kind of talk about it, you mentioned that you were only girl in your family.
Yes, growing up, I was the only girl.
So you had a lot of these men around you. Obviously, your mom had one opinion about what happened. What was the response from all these men around you, uncles, brothers, whomever? How did they respond to you when they found out about this? What was their thought?
You mean after I wrote the book?
Yeah, sure.
We haven't talked about it. My family on that side
does nothing at all. Oh,
no. I haven't even talked to my mom about it. I just know that it's different now, and I don't even know how to talk to her about it. And honestly, I'm at the point where I don't even care anymore because I'm such in a great place, and I am at the point where any negative people in my life, I remove them, and even if that's family. So even though like we're cool, I just haven't talked about it honestly with my family yet.
Wow.
That makes sense. You've got to, once you achieve your own inner peace, you just really don't want anything to disturb that.
Yeah.
It's valuable. Yeah. He's mind blown.
Yes, I am.
Not that I'm not, but he's like visually mind blown.
I applaud you.
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
And also, part of the book too, I used to always say, like growing up, my life was kind of like the Antoine Fisher story. I was the female version of him. He was the first movie and book I read that I was like, dang, that's me. And so he's the one who inspired me to want to write about my life because I wanted to give that same feeling to someone else. And I actually met my father when I was in my 20s. Well, I didn't meet him personally, but I found him in my 20s. And then I ended up finding out that I had 11 brothers and sisters from my father's side.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So
I made efforts to get in touch with them.
Yeah, actually, so I'm half Honduran. Growing up, my mom never talked about my father. My two younger brothers, they had their fathers in their life. So that was another reason why I was so resentful and angry because I'm like, why do they have dads and I don't? And maybe that's also why I looked for older men for, love, because I never had a real man father figure in my life at all. My uncles weren't really there. I stayed with my uncle one time and then he didn't know how to deal with me. He was kind of in a gang, so he didn't, want to deal with that. And then everyone else was younger. I was the oldest. So yeah, I had a thought too. I think it's turning 40.
It's terrible when that happens. It's just like fleets.
Yeah. So about my father's side. So yeah, I ended up, like I said, I never knew much about him. And then when I found them, I actually found them because I found my godmom, and she's very blunt. Like my mom and her were best friends before I was born. They actually were in a group home for girls together. That's how they met. So she knew my mom like intimately, everything that she was going through as a child with my grandmother. So when I was around 9 or so, they lost contact and I didn't find her until I was in my 20s. And when I found her, I was like, whatever happened to my father? I call her Medea because she talks just like Medea, except she curses way more. So she's very in your face and blunt. She was like, your father tried to be in your life. He came around and your mom kind of just was like, no, I have my baby, somebody that she wanted to love and just kind of, I don't need you kind of thing. So I wanted to find him, of course. And when I did find him, he had passed away before I got a chance to meet him. But my siblings had all been looking for me because I was the only one that was mixed with Black. They're all Honduran. and they're all from Honduras. So they were very curious about me, like, we have a Black sister out there. So when I found them, they were very open, to me, and very excited. They felt like it was bringing my father back a little bit. So I went to, like, half of my family lives in the US and the other half lives in Honduras. So of course I went back to visit them, and my father's buried out there. It was very emotional. I actually felt like, a huge weight was lifted out of my shoulders when I found his side.
That was fantastic. Were you able to chronicle that as well in the book or no?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Okay, so where can our listeners buy this book?
So it's called Chasing. Oh, I don't know if you can see it off there.
Oh no.
Probably because my little thing.
Yeah, the background. There you go.
Oh, there you go.
It's called Chasing Black Butterflies.
Yes.
It's really easy. ChasingBlackButterflies.com. My Instagram is Chasing Black Butterflies, and it's on Amazon. That's where you can get it. And then Evoleros is, Evoleros.com. And I'm getting ready, like I said, to do a Valentine's Day class. So tickets are now on sale if people want to sign up for that class.
So it's an in-person class. Is it just for like California? What part of California?
Yeah, so it's going to be in Los Angeles. With the whole COVID situation now, it's kind of hard to book studios now in advance. So I don't know the exact location, but it's going to be in Los Angeles. And there's also going to be Zoom. So if people can't make it on their East Coast or whatever, they can log on and watch it on Zoom.
Oh, fantastic. So anybody, anywhere. That's what I heard. You heard that?
Yep, anyone,
yes,
anywhere.
Anyone, anywhere. That is amazing. We're going to have all of that stuff in the show notes. I think this has been such a fantastic episode. I've learned a lot from you. I am in awe of all that you have overcome. I think this is really just the start of your story. You have so much more life to live and so much more journey to go. And you've already been quite the survivor. I deeply admire your vulnerability. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Again, thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to see the hundreds and thousands of things that you accomplish in the future. So well done, but I know this is just the beginning. You have a lot more to come. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Well, Harvey, I think that we have absolutely come to the conclusion that love is unpacking.
Love is unpacking.
I like that.
I like unpacking.
I like unpacking. I think that it fits the situation.
Mhm.
Love is many things.
But this good love is Black.